Welcome to Behind the Sofa. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Behind the Sofa. My name's Ollie.
And I'm Kirsty.
And today we're going to be talking about 2007's The Mist.
Number 99 on the list of the top 100 movies in history.
I was getting there. Now, to be fair, I feel like The Mist would be a welcome break from this disgusting heat wave. I feel like I'd prefer my chances in The Mist.
It is really hot.
I'm not digging it. It's not. I'd face down the big tentacle monsters rather than
spoilers.
They're all spoilers. Spoilers.
We've already even got the spoiler warning in.
They just
drop right in with the spoilers.
Tentacles are the first of the monsters you see, so okay. I think we're safe.
This is your spoiler warning for anyone who's not seen the movie. But then, why are you listening to this review?
Yeah, you should go watch the movies first. First of all, make sure you go over and give us a rate and subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast. So iTunes, Podbean, Soundcloud, YouTube, Spotify, all those good uns. And make sure you go and visit us on Facebook or Instagram at Behind the Sofa Podcast, and we'll have a chat. We'll have a good old chat.
We've got facts, updates. We've got all the information about where you can buy or rent or stream the movies that are on our list, and now where you can shop the books that the movies have been based off. So
books,
yeah,
nerds. Books, no book learning over here. Yeah. Right. So how are you, Kirsty?
I'm good. The Mist kind of drained me a little bit, I think.
It drained me.
Yeah.
I feel like in a different way though. Right, I guess let's just crack straight on, and talk about it. Okay. 2007, Frank Darabont. So this is like the third Stephen King book that he's adapted.
He's a huge Stephen King fan, in case you hadn't noticed. So he did Shawshank Redemption, which is amazing, in 1994, and then he did The Green Mile in 99. So yeah, going for proper heart-wrenching, hard to watch, but definitely worth watching Stephen King adaptations, basically, is his thing. So,
is it troubling if I try and do a John Coffey impression?
Yes. That's problematic.
I'm not going to do that.
That's problematic.
So yeah, 2007, Frank Darabont, The Mist, based on a Stephen King novella, yeah. It was part of a collection of stories, and it's the first one in the book, and it's the longest one, I believe. So it's in Skeleton Crew, it's also in Dark Forces, and it was, funnily enough, originally called The Fog. But because he found out about John Carpenter's film of The Fog, which is number 77 on our top 100, so we will be reviewing that, he decided to change it from The Fog to The Mist. So, well, when did he write it?
He wrote it, well, we don't know how long his writing process takes, but it was due to be coming out in 1980.
Haven't I heard all these stories about Stephen King's writing process where he just this is from what I've heard, he just blows a load of coke and just writes. That's 100%. I've definitely heard.
I'm going to have to research that. That's but how that he could be slanderous.
No, well, this is just what I'm hearing. Isn't that? I heard that's how he wrote Dreamcatcher. He literally said he had no memory of writing Dreamcatcher. He literally just sat in a cabin and
read about this now.
It's happening. I'm telling you.
Okay.
He's all over it.
Yeah. Allegedly.
We
can't say it right now. So
I besmirched Stephen King's good name last week, and now
yeah.
Stephen King, I really love you. I'm not anti-King.
He's totally listening right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's preparing his lawyers as we speak. So
prepare the lawyers, right? So takes place in Castle Rock.
It's not. It's in Maine, obviously.
I swear I saw the name Castle Rock on something, though.
The book was based in Bridgeton, Maine. There is in there's someone reading like a local paper which does say like the Castle Rock Gazette or the Castle Rock something.
So it's Castle Rock adjacent.
Yes.
So for anyone who doesn't know, Castle Rock is the town that Stephen King uses in all of his stories and books.
But they're all pretty much all set in Maine. I'm sure we've got a fan already who is a huge Stephen King fan as well. So I'm sure that she's going to be giving us the full rundown of the geography of Stephen King books, which are mostly in Maine. But
a huge book nerd from what I hear.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's also just a big old nod from Frank Darabont, as there are many which I'll go into later in this film.
It's so confusing.
I know.
So
right?
basically, the film stars Tom Jane of The Punisher.
Yep.
And that amazing cameo in Arrested Development where I just want my kids, if anyone remembers that, as David Drayton.
David Drayton.
David Drayton, Everyman American. That's very... him and his wife and his son live in this small town in Maine. There's a giant electrical storm and causes loads of damage around the town. Trees are falling through windows and everything's getting smashed up. And then in the aftermath of the storm, David Drayton decides to take his son, whose name is
Billy,
of course. Isn't that the most like generic small
I'm not sure
in
if
apple cheek child name?
I'm not sure if it is Billy in the book. I'm sure he kept to it as much as he possibly could. But the fact that he calls him Big Bill, which is also the nickname of Bill from It. So it's also another nod in there from Frank Darabont towards Stephen King. So there's plenty of them.
Okay, so David and Billy, the little kid, decide to go into town to get supplies with David's grumpy next door neighbour, who is a high-flying New York City slicker lawyer, played by Andre Braugher, or Captain Holt for all you people who love Brooklyn Nine-Nine out there.
Yep.
So they decide to go into town. They arrive at the supermarket. Everyone's at the supermarket because they're all buying supplies after the big storm.
Which is called the Food House. Which
is a terrible name. terrible. Although it does kind of make me picture like cute little foods, like anthropomorphic food, like a little donut with eyes and.
Yeah, I want that.
And they decide to go down, get loads of supplies from the shop, and then the mist descends.
No, wait. I wrote this down because I was like, it's such a wonderful way that they've just slowly started building stuff up. So David and his wife and his kid, they go out to survey the damage of what has happened. And many of his paintings get destroyed because he's an artist, we can...
Now, issue number 1. Ollie's issue number 1.
Uh-oh.
Those are Drew Struzan paintings.
They are.
So, Drew
like
Struzan...
actual Drew Struzan, as in Drew Struzan painted those paintings that are in that film.
And then they destroyed them?
I don't know.
Kirsty just gave me the biggest like...
But I know from my fact finding that they did actually get Drew Struzan in there, but like if you look at them, like they've all got like... It's just full of nods. It's a fan film for Stephen King. It's amazing.
So first off, those are all Drew Struzan paintings. So if anyone doesn't know Drew Struzan, you do know Drew Struzan. He did the posters for things like all the Indiana Jones movies, Big Trouble in Little China, The Thing, like the famous poster for The Thing, which he did in a night, I think. Which you can see in the background. But at the moment the tree breaks through the window and destroys a load of his painting, he's painting the front cover of The Dark Tower. Mm-hmm. Okay, which is another Stephen King.
One of the guns, like the gunslinger character from The Dark Tower.
So issue number 1 for Ollie. Immediately, as a person with a little bit of knowledge, I think, well, that's not David Drayton's painting. That's Drew Struzan's painting, and just weirdly self-referential in a way that kind of bugged me, because immediately it brought me out of it and I was like, what a weird choice. They could have just done like weird knockoffs, which...
No, it's like it's literally like him basically saying, I love Stephen King this much that I'm going to have you painting the gunslinger from The Dark Tower. In the background you can see The Thing painting, and then The Thing was directed by John Carpenter. John Carpenter directed The Fog, which is a nod to The Mist, and he also wrote and directed Christine, John Carpenter did. So like it's all connected.
It's all incestuous.
Yeah, I like it.
So, tell me, because apparently I managed to cock up the intro somehow. So go on, tell me what else happened in there in that intro. What else did I miss
really
out?
Like I said, I really like the slow build up. So they basically, like Dave and his wife and his kid, they go outside, they go and have a look at the damage. The tree's gone through the window into his studio. It smashed the boathouse and things like that. And then they look over the lake because they've got their lake house, which I think is their holiday home. It's not their. Because they all point out he's like, New York artist or whatever. So
I thought he was a local, and they shun the other outsiders like Andre Braugher.
I don't know. But anyway, they're on the front of the lake, and like his wife's like, that's weird. Like looking over at the mountains, and you can see this mist, like really thick mist coming down off the mountains. And he's like, oh, that's normal. Like he's just explaining it away, and she's like, no, that's kind of weird. And then they're like, sort of shrug, and they're fine. And then they go into the town to go and pick up supplies. He goes to make a phone call from the local public phone. The phones are out. And he's like, that's weird. I guess just because of the storm. And then the supply store, like Ollie said earlier, it's like full of people who are like hoarding supplies and making sure that they're all, like just panic buying. So that sort of started to get a little bit more stressful. It's a small town. Everyone knows everyone, so they're all asking how they are. Then you see the military police milling around, and then you see the police cars like speeding by with sirens blaring, and everyone sort of stares out because it's obviously the most exciting thing that's ever happened in their like quiet little town. And then the air raid siren sounds, and that sound, like there's no way that anyone could ever think that that's like a joyful sound or
ice cream man.
So that starts going off, and that is like a terrifying sound, just that the sound as soon as you hear it. So they've got that, and then there's an earthquake, then it's just that build up to that, and everyone's just like, what the hell is going on? And so there's all that bit leading up to the earthquake. So you want to take it from there?
Well, I feel like people know, like I said, spoilers. There's going to be spoilers, so we're not just going to go blow by blow through the scenes. But what did you think? Did you like The Mist? Let's give it some thoughts.
The film, the entire film, or the actual,
No, the film,
entity.
not the weather. The
I
weather
didn't
system.
really like the entity that
Do you
much.
like Mist?
I think it's a great film. I think, like, looking back on it, I think I must have watched this, because we both watched it, but we haven't watched it together. This is the first time that we've watched it together. So that means I haven't watched it in, like, 10 plus years. And there was so much more. I don't know whether it was because I was sort of reviewing it with a critical eye, taking a few notes and things, but I really, really enjoyed it. I think it's definitely worth watching. Pretty much everyone, when we started posting up that we were going to be doing this, we got a lot of people on social media who were saying that they absolutely loved it. They thought it was great. But just that it's really fucking heavy, It's hard going, and it's bleak. And it's also just like showing how awful humans can be, as well as the monsters outside. So
I guess the first thing to say is, having come from watching The Babadook, which is a film like real heavy on the subtext, this week does not let up whatsoever.
Yeah, I am really sorry about that. I did actually write in this, I was just like, oh my god, please let us have like some funny ones or something coming up. So, like we do have some that aren't so like absolutely soul destroying coming up.
Well, not even so much soul destroying. I mean, just like, it's a movie about gribbly monsters coming out of the mist, but it's also a movie about there's some definite, very, very pointed like 9/11 stuff in there. So, one of the, I don't want to go too deep and morose in a horror movie, but when the mist rolls in, immediately it reminded me of that kind of cloud of dust that came after the Twin Towers came down. Then immediately, who volunteers and who gets killed first? It's the kid. So basically, the army immediately sign up, and then they get sent out to war on behest of these like people at home. Kirsty's looking at me like I'm cracking her mind right now.
I haven't even made this connection.
Really?
No.
I found this. If anything, I found it almost too too obvious, because it was basically like these two. So basically, there's a scene in Tom Jane is there. Everyone's decided to board themselves up in the supermarket. They don't know what's going on. All they know is from the words of one of the townsfolk that there's something in the mist and it's taking people.
It's so good.
And
that's Jeffrey DeMunn from who plays Dale in The Walking Dead. There's a lot of Walking Dead people in this.
Yeah, so many Walking Dead people.
He comes running in just like with a bloody nose, screaming that there's something in the mist, which is like it's such an ambiguous phrase, but like you're still like, what? Oh my god!
But so there's this scene, Tom James and Toby Jones, who plays Ollie, the one of the guys who works at the supermarket, who is awesome.
Not just because he's called Ollie, no.
No.
You don't feel like a kinship with him, just like thinking he's the best.
Although I was reading the thing today and it was basically saying that anyone named Ollie in a movie is automatically some sort of schlub, and I was like, no.
Oh,
but anyway, they go out back and they're in the loading dock of the supermarket with these two guys, Myron and I can't remember the name of the other guy. They're basically the overall wearing hicks.
Mechanic
as they like real blue collar kind of guys who are not painted in the most flattering light. So when I say hicks, that is very much the way they are portrayed in the film. And also the Shermanator from American Pie, and immediately it's the kid volunteers and with some kind of cajoling from these kind of overall wearing redneck guys, and he's the one who decides, and he goes outside and he's the one that dies first, which is obviously to my mind a pretty like transparent comment on people at home riding their tractors and sitting in their hammocks saying go to war and check stuff out, and then all of a sudden the kids are getting sent off and being killed,
and they're just standing and that I see
now
it,
I'm saying it.
But and they were literally like, they did the perfect that I'm sure that you'll see it in a lot of the movies that we'll be reviewing, but you'll see the whole I don't believe you, I'm going to rip the piss out of you and laugh at you, then the thing's going to happen and I'm going to die, or someone's going to die, and then all of a sudden I'm like, shit, it's actually happening. Like the whole ha, I'm dead now.
And just in case anyone may be thinking Ollie's way off on his 9/11 comparison, what is the Shermanator's last words before he gets killed?
Oh my god.
It's "Let's rock," which is very
no way.
Well, yeah, so there we go. The last words they heard on the flight going into that crashed in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to need to reread the book just to see how much of it is there and whether how much he sort of tilted it in that direction. But it'd be interesting to see if anyone else has drawn those kind of parallels. Have you sort of read anything where people have said this online, or is this just literally?
No, as soon as I saw that smoke rolling in, I was like, And also, I guess something about movies that are post 9/11, you've always got to run them through that filter of, is this a comment on, American political, American politics post 9/11, basically. But there's so much other stuff as well, because it's all, after the attack, then it's all about, well, basically, things coming in from the mist. So an obvious parallel with immigration,
scary,
and
scary people coming into your, dangerous people coming into your lovely small town, and
exactly. And then religious fervour gets whipped up by Marcia Gay Harden, who plays Mrs. Carmody, which sounds like a I know they are all made up names, but just sounds like almost like a 30 Rock name. Like they got bored halfway through saying Mrs. Carmody. I was like, what?
But yeah, she's great. She then renames herself Mother Carmody as she starts going on, and I was saying before how folk horror and those sorts of things are the sort of films that I enjoy, but I do also love a bit of Old Testament biblical type stuff coming on. So I was quite enjoying all of that, even though she is she's awful, but You can see where people who are in like a desperate situation would suddenly either like turn to religion or turn to the person who's shouting the loudest, basically. So they split quite quickly. They're already kind of split. They mention it earlier with Dave, which is why it makes me think that he is either just moved to that town and so he's still the stranger from the outside, or him and his family holiday up there, which is what we know, like Norton, like Andre Braugher's character, is the lawyer who goes up there to vacation or to holiday or whatever up by the lake, to get away from the city. So there's always that bit of, not paranoia, but like dislike for the people who are encroaching on their territory a bit. So you've already got the outsiders or the out of towners and the locals, but then it becomes more the rational people who are like, right, we need to think of a plan and we're going to keep discussing this plan and then we're going to eventually try and do something about this and we're not going to believe anything else that they're saying. And then you have Mrs. Carmody with her like religious, believing that this is a sign of the end times and the plagues. And then you have Dave Drayton, level-headed guy in the middle who knows that this stuff is out there because he's seen it firsthand, but does not agree with any of the plans that anyone else is going on with because he thinks they're all crazy. So I'd say the one thing I totally agree. I think the one thing that they do really well in this film is the kind of portrayal of how regular people would act in a disaster. I think is what Stephen King is like, and I guess Frank Darabont therefore are really trying to like examine in this movie about tentacle monsters and people's faces exploding with spiders. I feel like really kind of getting down to the core of people and seeing how it is that they react. Some people do the honourable thing, some people volunteer, some people try and hide out, some people take their own lives, some people resort to kind of religious zealotry, and I've got to say that was the one of the elements that kind of did not do it for me. I've got to say, I know you just said how much you like. Yeah, I know you just said how much you liked that character and that aspect of it. I didn't like her, but well, like I know. The overall like fear makes you do crazy things, so people turned from like thinking that she was the town nut job, I think that was actually the term that was used, into she is the saviour and she's the one who's speaking the truth, and they're all literally like she's preaching to them and they're all just like clapping their hands, waving their arms in the air like like a real sermon. So it's creepy to watch. The thing is, I would like some more grey area in there. I feel like it's very much like religion is bad, and I do, I think that is definitely true in a lot of cases, but at the same time, it's handled in a bit of a teenage, angsty, you know what I mean? I would have been so into this movie when I was about 13, 14 years old. I would have been like, yeah, man. There was definitely... But why? What bits? Just like I said, it is very much like religion is bad and holds no place in a rational society. And I was like, that may well be the case in some instances, but they paint it in such a, who is it that immediately turns to her side? It's the, kind of overall wearing hicks, and they're all of a sudden they become like a dangerous arm of her religious zealotry, and all of a sudden I think, it's all a bit too, everyone's getting tarred with a ginormous brush. Like I said, I could have done with a little bit more kind of grey, a little bit more subtlety in there that I thought would have like massively improved it. Okay. And also Marsha Gay Harden, Mrs. Carmody, that is possibly, and this is in a horror movie, one of the hammiest performances that I have possibly ever seen. I liked her portrayal of it. As a person, she would be horrific to be around. And, for sure. But I actually just really like that bit. Like she's a pretty horrible person. But I think. But can you imagine the film without that aspect? I can. But, I can't imagine it without it, but I can imagine it with a more nuanced kind of
portrayal or a more nuanced character. I think she does the best with what is on the page, which is basically just someone shouting fire and brimstone Bible passages. And, you know, you've got to try and get some character in there somehow. So I do think she does like a pretty good job, but at the same time it is a bit one note. And I don't even really think it was her fault. If you've got a pretty one note character, the only way to really do it is to ham it the fuck up.
Yeah.
Is to break out the mortadella. You know, the lardo, that wafer crumb ham. It's got to be.
Stop talking about food now.
Yeah, it's got to be that whole thing. But this is not to say I think overall the acting is bad. If anything, I was massively impressed. There's a lot of people in that supermarket, and they do, for them, I would say 99% of the cast do a pretty admirable job. The little side characters are the one that really got me. Like, you'll know that when you turn up, Toby Jones is a great character actor, and this is one of those movies where it's basically populated by character actors, the guys who are not necessarily going to be your leading man, either because they look a bit like Toby Jones or because, you know, they're a little bit older, or but I think those, you know, like, I can't even remember the guy's name. There's an old dude with a mustache, and he is with them till quite close to the end. And I was like, oh, I love this character. He's cool. He's like a cool little add-on. He doesn't really contribute much, but I just thought it was almost like a stage play. Didn't you think? It was like
definitely. This. It's all just set in one place, isn't it?
We should do that. We should mount a West End version of The Mist.
Oh, that could be good.
That could be real cool.
No, I mean there is all like we mentioned earlier. You know, there's like, I think 4 main and then a few stand-in characters that were all in The Walking Dead, but then Frank Darabont did he developed and he executive produced like season 1 and part of season 2 for The Walking Dead. So there would have been people in here that it would have been like, you know, you definitely decided that he was going to have them involved in The Walking Dead because of their acting. I mean, like Melissa McBride, who plays Carol in The Walking Dead, and she plays like unnamed woman at the beginning when the mist first appears, and she's like, I have to get home to my kids. That
for me was one of the best moments in the film.
Yeah, like they said that when they yelled cut on that, like everyone applauded her just for like that little part there, because she does, like, it's a tiny little section where she's literally like asking for someone to help her, and then she just walks out and disappears into the mist. And then
there's something that is where I think the script really excels, like that kind of what a normal person is thinking. It's all well and good to be like, we need to barricade the front of the store so the big giant bugs don't get in, but when it's like, I have to get out of here because my 8-year-old daughter is looking after my 4-year-old son at home, and I'm terrified that they're being, you know, something's happening to them and I don't know what it is, so I need to get the fuck out of here. I thought that was one of the best moments in the film.
That's normal, isn't it? Because not everybody's going to have like the strategic mind of like, right, this is what we should do because this will be the greatest point of success for all of us to be able to survive. It's just literally like, I am a normal person and this thing is happening and this is the first thing that's in my mind. Like, what is happening down the road with my kids, or, you know, like, are my parents okay? You know, like, is my house okay? Is my car okay? It depends on like what your the things that are important to you in your life, like what that would like what would happen if you were in a situation like this. Not like Mist with monsters in it specifically, but if you were in like a horrible situation where, you know, with a bunch of people that you don't know all that well, and trying to work out like whether you should strike out on your own, whether you should be asking people for help, who you should side with, who would be most helpful in getting to where you want to go. I guess you wouldn't know what you would do in that situation. Everyone's always like, oh, well, what I would do is this. You have no idea what you would do in that situation. No one does.
I think that's what makes it realistic as well. Like, you know what I mean? In a world of B-movie monsters, in order to make it kind of fly, I guess you've either got to go one way or the other. You've got to play it deadpan and super serious, or you've got to go crazy and off the wall with it. So I thought that bit was really good. Talking of crazy monsters and stuff in the mist, what did you think? I feel like we've spoken about it as like the allegory for a terrorist attack, but what about a horror movie? Is it a good horror movie?
I think it's a good horror movie. I think like there's certain areas of it. Wow, how do I say it? There's certain areas of it where they were just like, we want to go for like the biggest bang for our buck. You know, we want to not get rid, but we want to like really ramp up the fear. So they have, you know, like the attacking creatures. I think I saw recently, I haven't watched it yet, but there's like a YouTube video that's like the top 10 monsters in the Mist, and I'm like, was there 10? And I started
I counted like 7 or 8. I couldn't get 10.
I started noting them down. So you literally got like the tentacles, locusty type ones, waspy type ones, the big dude that you see.
And there's like 3 different kinds of spider. But did you think they looked good?
I thought they looked pretty good for, like, you know, a movie that's like, what, 12 years old now? Like, you know, I think they looked alright. Like, I found myself more into watching the film and enjoying the film and being genuinely concerned about, like, some of my favourite characters' well-being rather than looking at the looking at the CGI and thinking, yeah, no, you know. So that's a sign for me that, like, the movie has really sucked you in, because you're not, like, looking for, you know, different bits of editing or CGI that aren't that good. You're just enjoying the fact that there are literally, like, these prehistoric, demonic-looking monsters that are attacking people.
See, I'm not sold on the look of probably 50% of those creatures. I thought that some of that CGI has dated terribly. The very first monster you see, the tentacle one, I thought looked terrible. Like, has those real weird early 2000s kind of shiny quality where they've not really mastered, like, how it is that light hits, like how light
textures and stuff.
It all just looked super like it had no weight to it, and which automatically takes me out of it.
Okay.
And then I thought I love the little weird stingy locust wasp bugs. I thought they looked cool. But then those things that come in and try and eat them when they, like, break into the shop,
the
those
pterodactyl.
They were
I forgot about the pterodactyl
super lame.
ones.
He looked like a weird, like, Sam the Toucan, but who'd, like, fallen in the fucking RoboCop ooze. I was like, I don't like it. I did not like them one bit. Okay. And then when you see a couple of them in the Mist as well, I was like, the actual creature design did not do it for me. Having said that, there were some fucking cool deaths in this movie.
Yep.
Some real cool death. I spoke about it earlier. When that military policeman's face and back explode and spiders come out of him, I was like, that was metal. That was real metal.
You mean when they go to the pharmacy next door, which is called King's Pharmacy?
I see. I'm not into that. That's a bit lazy. But yeah, exploding spiders.
Yeah.
And then a scene which has inspired the name for my band's new grindcore album, Grandma with a Flamethrower, which really, I was like,
Irene, she was like the sassy old, like, retired teacher
grandma
lady. She was amazing.
She was good. I was really hoping they wouldn't go a certain way with her, and I feel like for the most part they tried to make her believable old lady rather than kind of hip happening rap grandma or something, which was no good. But yeah, Shermanator's death, I liked it. It was like he had, like, stuff, like, sucked off him.
Yeah, they had, like the tentacles that you see, they suddenly, like, you know, appear almost like, I can't think how to describe it, but, you know, they look like tentacles, and then they unfurl and they've got, like, claws, like thorns sticking out of them, and then a mouth on the end of each one.
So I guess
they suck and, like, rip, like, sections
of
you.
The old suck and rip.
Yeah, sounds vicious.
And then the other one that got me, which I thought was probably the coolest, was actually there's two. The woman who gets stung in the face by that wasp, and then she blows up like Violet Beauregard from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
What you saw?
Yeah, she was like,
okay,
that made me laugh.
Let me see if the last one is.
You know which one's going to be the favourite one is clearly
because you asked me last time, and I wanted to see whether we were going to get into it this time. Like our favourite bits. My favourite bit apart from Irene, the sassy old lady, because she's great, is the rope.
Yeah, that's the one I was going to say.
Yeah.
So basically this biker dude decides he's going to make a run for the shotgun in one of the trucks, and they tie a rope around him, and you can already see exactly where this is going. But he runs out.
No, he literally saunters out with a group of other people who disappear, and you never really find out like their fate. They just go.
But basically, he runs out and then
walks out.
All right,
he walks out. It's important.
Okay, he walks out. He walks out. The most important part is the fact that he gets bifurcated. He gets chopped in half.
Yeah, but it's literally like the way that they do it though, because they're like slowly trying to see whether he'll go out. They're like, basically, if you get to the end of the rope, then that means you've managed to get 300 feet safely. So it's slowly, you just watch it, like the rope just like winding its way out of the door. They're holding on to it, and then all of a sudden it goes slack. Then it picks up again, and then it goes up to the top of the door. And then it starts like whipping through their hands, so they're like trying to pull it back in, and then it sort of whatever's pulling on the other end kind of stops, and so they're pulling it back in, and then all of a sudden the rope is soaked in blood, and it's just that bit is just so good. And then
they start dragging it in.
They pull him back in, and then they suddenly see appearing out of the mist is like his lower half, and that's all that's left of him. And I was like, that's amazing death, good death.
It was a good death,
yeah.
and although I did slag off the CGI earlier, for a lot of the gore I think is CGI. Not all, because I know Greg Nicotero, I think it's Greg Nicotero, had something to do with it. The guy does all the effect on The Walking Dead, so there was a bunch of practical effects. But like the Shermanator, when he starts having chunks ripped out of him, that is CGI. When the guy's back explodes with spiders, that is CGI. And I thought for CGI violence, it was pretty good. It's not normally my favourite, but
so you didn't like the monsters, but the gore was okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. I think the gore more than made up for it, I think. And even then I could have done with more gore. There was definitely a point towards the end where I was like, it's becoming less and less of a horror movie and more of like a 12 Angry Men, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to stand around and talk about inhumanity to man.
Yeah.
There was definitely a little bit too... When it started getting really... after they'd come back from the spider exploration, and they came back in, and basically everyone in the store, except for like 8 or 10 people, have decided that this lady's crazy religious fervour is the way to go. Then it started to get a little bit, I was like, okay, I could do with some more deaths and some more action and something else going on.
Yeah, but I mean, they then start going into, like you were saying earlier, like how people would deal with that kind of situation. So you've got
I feel like they'd established that all before.
But then like it's what do they start doing? Because first you start thinking, right, what's the plan? What am I going to do? What are the main things that are important to me? Who am I going to work with? Who am I going to stay? Who am I going to look after? Who needs looking after? Depending on how your mind works. But then they start going more into there's people who are losing hope. You start talking to I'm trying to remember her name. She's Olivia in The Walking Dead. Laurie Holder's character, who's like the school teacher who hangs out with Dave and Billy, and she's just like, she's starting to lose hope. She's like, this is it. This is how we're going to end. And then you've got 3 like military police, 3 soldiers even, who 2 of them take themselves off into the loading dock, which is the first place that we see one of the creatures, and they decide to kill themselves. And then the story starts coming out as to what they think happened. I
could have done without that. Could you?
No, but the beginning part of this movie, apparently Andre Braugher actually talked Frank Darabont out of it. The beginning part was meant to be introducing where the mist first came from. So the idea was that up in the mountains, that was another thing that set the scene as well. They sort of did like a few offhanded comments about there being a military base just outside of town in the mountains, and the stories that were in town about it, like the rumours that there were like alien spacecraft and they were doing like top secret military experiments and stuff up there. And then they're just like, and then that's it.
I just feel like I feel like even just explaining it, I was like, I could have just anything. I'd much rather you had no explanation for it. If they'd shown, like, oh, there's a military base up the road, and then just left it at that, I would have been like, that's fine. That's fine by me.
They decided to cut that little bit out, but keep the idea that, like, the main part was meant to be at the very, very beginning of the film, before they meet anyone and before the mist appears, so that we know where it was coming from the get-go, was that they were doing these experiments and stuff to try and open up these portals to other dimensions, which is what the soldier explains what he's trying to do, or say that it wasn't his fault, but he knew that they were doing it. Was that they were doing those experiments, and they'd had warnings not to do these things during thunderstorms, and then lightning hits the base, which causes the tear in interdimensional space to open up even wider, and then all these creatures start pouring out, and that's where the mist comes from. So he mentions that. He then gets attacked by all of the religious people, and they offer him up as a sacrifice, which is what they thought needed to happen because someone died previously, and they were just like, oh, they'll leave us alone tonight. And then they just start doing, like, proper Lord of the Flies, like, sacrifice, we're going to sacrifice him, we're going to sacrifice the boy. And, yeah, it's just showing people, like...
I didn't like it. Really I didn't like it. I feel like, even... At that stage in the film, I feel like what is important is the atmosphere and that kind of, like I said, how people react in that situation. I don't want to know. I don't want to know about the Arrowhead Project or any of the garbage that's going on at that military base. It has zero impact on what is happening in the story right now. The only thing it gave a good excuse for is for that guy to get thrown outside and fed to the creatures in the mist. I just felt like, no, I didn't buy it, and I didn't think they needed to do it. Thank Christ that Andre Brow decided to tell Frank Darabont, please don't go and make a whole
cut that bit
mist
out.
Origin story. Thank God that didn't happen. So I think we're getting towards the end now, but let's talk about that ending. Okay.
Well, the ending in the book... Without ruining the book, well, kind of ruining the book.
I was going to say, it sounds like you're about to ruin the book.
The book ending is different to the film, but I will leave what the actual ending to the book is. But in the book itself, the Dave character actually has like a thought going through his head, because he's the narrator of the story, so it's all first person from Dave's point of view. Dave actually has the thought, because he's got 4 people in his car. In the film, it's 5, right?
Yeah, because he has 4 bullets and then there's 5 of them.
So in the book, it is 3 bullets and 4 people, and it crosses his mind. He's just like, well, 3 bullets, 4 people. We'll just have to work it out if it comes to it, and then that's kind of where it's left. But Darabont had basically been nursing wanting to do this adaptation since the 80s, since he read this, and he finally managed to do it and get it done for 2007. So he had pulled all of this together, pulled everything that he wanted to do with this film, and honed it to where he really wanted it to be. And so what he did was he basically took like what would have been like a throwaway but still really dark thought. If you're reading that in the book, in the story, and you're like, oh, that's a bit of a that's a real dark thought, he decided to grab that dark thought and basically run with it, and was just like, what would happen if we went into like the darkest recesses of like a Stephen King story? So he decided to go with it.
Now, the first time I saw it, I remember thinking how awesome that ending was. I didn't like it this time around.
Really?
No, it was a real gut punch, but I don't really feel like it made any like narrative sense with what was going on, with it, having established everything that they've established. And especially with these characters, like their outlook and who they are and what their beliefs are, I just didn't really buy it. I was just like, they would keep fighting until the very end, until they fucking starved to death. And they didn't. They just, they basically just.
But, I mean, you've already had like the teacher character. She had already said, like this is the end. She hadn't like thrown it out and been like, right, fuck it, like this is all I'm doing forever, and that's it, I'm done. But you knew that she was on the verge of giving up, like thinking there's no hope left, Billy was fast asleep and he was too young to be able to comprehend really like what that would mean. And then you've got the two old like hard asses, the guy who saw it first and told everyone, and then the old lady who was like complete no nonsense and was just like, I've lived my life and that's it. So I can see where they're coming from in that. They decided really quickly though. That's the only thing I would say.
Way too quickly. And also that kid can sleep through literally fucking anything. It was like people getting shot, fine. Weird crazy monsters flying around, fine. It's like they gave him like a fucking Valium.
But his dad clicking the gun and like loading the bullets made him stir and flicker. So yeah,
I guess that makes it kind of double creepy because it's like he's been asleep the whole time, and then all of a sudden the one thing he wakes up for is his dad about to shoot him in the face. Yeah. Now, did it shit you up?
Not shit me up. There's a few bits that I was just like, oh no, like, you know, I'm not too bothered by spiders, but like if anyone's not a fan of spiders, there's a lot of spidery type stuff that goes on. The creatures themselves were good. Again, it's, you know, it doesn't really have that much in the way of like real big jump scares. There's just a lot of like you've grown to like some of the characters, you've grown to know them a little bit more, and then, you know, like as they slowly sort of start dying off, you're like, ah. And so it is hard in that way. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it shit me up, but I enjoyed it. It
1000% did not shit me up. I seem to remember liking it more than I liked it this time round. I've got to say, I was really looking forward to it, and it left me a little bit cold. Like I said, it definitely had a bit too much of the grandstanding, and there were too many messages being delivered to camera at the end of it. And I was like, let's just someone get a fucking acid spiderweb thrown at their face again. That was fun. Let's go back to that. Because I feel like they did all the good setup of here's how humans react terribly when something goes wrong. That was all set up so well at the beginning, and then it just descended into, you know, too much of that. Basically, there was just too much, and I just would rather have had more seeing and less talking. Not to say I hated it. Did not hate it. It was good. It was a solid 6 out of 10.
Okay.
But
I don't know. We were doing out of 10s.
But we're not. We need to figure out our own system. Like I said, I think that "Did It Shit You Up" will be the new barometer of whether Behind the Sofa found it scary or not. And for me, it was definitely a not shitting up.
It's not, but it's still I think it's a good film. I think it's. Do you think it belongs on the list, though?
Well, it doesn't belong above the Babadook.
Okay.
So immediately, I know we're not getting into this now. This is for another podcast all in and of itself. But it immediately gets bumped down to number 100, and the Babadook goes up to 99, in my opinion.
Okay.
Did you like it more than the Babadook?
No, I think I prefer the Babadook. Both of them are really hard going in their own way. I mean, like, if you're watching along, then I'm sure you'll agree. If you've seen both films, I'm sure you'll agree as well. But they're both really hard going. They're not. They're definitely both films that we recommend that you should watch. They're just not going to be ones on like heavy rotation, I don't think, because they're just too hard going. But yeah. Two films to start off super heavy on the old subtext. They got the big giant fucking pepper grinder full of subtext at the restaurant, and they're just way too much. Hold it back. Yeah.
So next week, what have we got?
Next week we have Martin, which is our first George A. Romero movie, and the first movie that we have not seen.
Yeah.
Neither of us have seen this movie, so we're actually really looking forward to seeing it. So this is Martin, who is a young man who believes that he is an 80-something-year-old, maybe older, vampire, and uses that maybe as an excuse or his belief in going around attacking women. So.
And where can people go and watch it?
Well, I've actually managed to find a copy of it on YouTube. Whether that is going to still stay up if we end up with a bunch of people watching it or not, but I will post up the links.
I don't think we're going to break the internet somehow.
Maybe, you never know. We also have it on our horror movie store, which you can find if you go to tinyurl.com/behindthesofa. And that'll take you straight to the website, and then if you have a look on the menu, you'll be able to see where you can find all of our episodes so far, where you can find the list itself, and where you can find the books and the movies, and where you can purchase them. So we'll be putting those up as we go on throughout the week, ready for next episode.
Yeah, and remember, facebook.com and Instagram at Behind the Sofa Podcast. And please, if you could go and give us a rate and subscribe and a like or whatever it is on any of the places, or on any of the places where you listen to the podcast, that would be amazing. Right, and I think that's it from me. It's a goodbye, and from Kirsty,
from Behind the Sofa, good night.
Good night, everyone.